Hello, this is Clarence Moye with Awards Daily here with Paddy Considine, the star of HBO's House of the Dragon. Paddy, it's fantastic to meet you.
Nice to meet you, sir.
So, as I look at your performance in House of the Dragon, it's a very different kind of role for you. I remember first seeing you, I think, way back in America, and now you're playing a king here. So, was it exciting to you to be able to take on something as different from your standard projects that you've been working on?
Yeah. I've always wanted to do different things and play different characters and stuff. Like the last three things I did with HBO. There's a show called The Outsider, and one called The Third Day, and then House of the Dragon. And you couldn't get different characters. With those three. I was just waiting for a really great role to come along that was sort of I don't know. I think I was always felt a little bit in the shadows, and I was waiting for a little bit of a platform, if you like. I've felt that back home I was getting, as you do, you get a little bit typecast here and there, and you feel like you've got some experience now, and you've got a bit more to give, but you just can't find the right role. And Viserys came along at the perfect time for me, and this show came along. You know, I'd got some experience and I'd done a long theatre run in London and New York, and I felt I'd got a lot of experience through that. I wasn't sort of trained as an actor, meaning that I didn't go to drama school and things like that. And I feel like theatre gave me a lot of experience and a lot of confidence. So, these things all sort of line up and a bit of synchronicity comes into play. But I think I'd been waiting for a long time for a role like Viserys. It wasn't necessarily I was dying to play a king, but I'd been waiting for something like this.
Sure. So when you started to sort of understand who Viserys was, obviously you've got the scripts. There's also, some a novel. It's based on Dance of the Dragon by George R. R. Martin. But how did you what worked best for you to try to figure out who Viserys was as an individual? And did you talk to anybody? Did you talk to George about sort of the backstory and kind of how he came into being, or was it just right there all on the paper?
No, it was so. I mean, a lot of it is on paper. No, but I didn't talk to George. No, Ryan Condal is the knowledge on that set. He knows everything about the world. And then I had Miguel Sapochnik, who had worked on the original shows and done some of the more outstanding epic episodes. So they had all the knowledge I needed. I think when I step onto something to begin with, rather than own it, I'm sort of trying to figure out what people want, and I don't think that's the right way to do it. And I think that's how I started with House of the Dragon. I could see there was this great character, but it took a while to access him. Because you do the job and you kind of go, what do they want from me? Whereas that's not how you should really do it. But a real turning point was we had a read through, a really horrible, uncomfortable read through. We're all sort of 10 meters away from each other, and it was one of those COVID jobs, and on camera. And I just thought it was terrible. I hate read throughs anyway, and I know they're necessary. They are necessary, but I can't stand them all the same. And I just did this read through and thought, oh God, surely they're going to get rid of me now because that was awful. And Miguel just came up at the end and he took a pause. He looked at me and I thought, what's he going to say? And he went, we need to put more Paddy in him.
Mm.
And I don't know, for me, that there's something that clicked in my head, and I went, okay, it's one of those gigs. Oh, okay, okay, let's do it then. Let's dance. It just gave me license. I think in the past I'd acted in things, and you feel like you've got handcuffs on.
Mhm.
You really do. You feel like you've got handcuffs on, and you're just standing on marks, and you want to play a character. You want it to live and breathe and move and be authentic and all those great things. Why you want to do this for a job, and that just gave me license to go. Okay, right, the gloves are off. Let's go. And that's what I kind of did, you know. And I think because of that, he became a far more emotional character than maybe he was on the page.
Mm.
And I was able to sort of add elements, and I got so steeped in him as a character and grew to love him so much as a character that I was able to sort of just bring little moments in, little improvisations at pivotal times, very, very minute, but you know, they managed to make it into the final show, and I was grateful for that. I felt like he was mine, and I think that's important.
But you only had him for 8 episodes, right? Because obviously he dies
I had
before
him,
the end of the
yeah,
season.
I had him for 8 eps, but I kind of lived with him for a year, so
That's true.
I
That's true.
I had him a bit longer than that, you know. So, but I know what you mean, yeah.
Did it change anything at all about the way that you played him, knowing that he was only going to be there for 8 episodes, or is it just, it was 8 episodes,
I
8 episodes?
I think it probably did because you know you've got to tell his story, and that was one that was really satisfying about reading the script and about playing him, was that there wasn't just this sudden knife to the throat, there wasn't just this sudden
Mm,
twist, it was a real demise. So I, as an actor, I got to be all the things that I always wanted to be. You know, I got to be the Elephant Man, I got to be the Phantom of the Opera, I got to be, you know, this character that goes on this real physical and mental journey. um, and the more stuff they threw at me, the more I loved it. You know, like we are going to put a mask on it. I was like, great, you've been waiting for this. There's a big reveal when he takes it off. It's like you've been waiting for this all your life. You've been all your life as an actor. You've been waiting to do something like this. So, you know, I just really, as hard as it was at times, I just really enjoyed making it. I enjoyed
absolutely.
imbuing him with all these qualities. I thought he was a massive challenge. The biggest challenge, really, in a thing like that, is to make it authentic and to make the relationships authentic. Because some of the language is a little bit fiddly,
Mhm.
and you've got to sort of, you know, get your head around it a bit.
Right.
And for a sort of working class kid like me, you know, trying to get my head around some of that was a challenge. But it, you know, I managed it. We all managed it. You know, it was a task to make that stuff believable
Mm.
and to make these characters believable.
One of the things you're talking about, the language, one of the things that I love the most about House of the Dragon was that how Shakespearean it felt in terms of blending the family with politics. I mean, that's a huge theme in a lot of Shakespearean
Yeah.
tragedies. Were there any conversations about that? Did you tap into any characters like Hamlet or somebody like that to play Viserys?
No, it's interesting. I get the Shakespeare thing, but I met, do you know, the actor Robert England,
Yes.
who's very famous. He's a character actor, very famous, obviously, for playing Freddy Krueger. I met him a couple of weeks ago, and he's an absolute gentleman. He's a really lovely man. And I'm such a big fan of his, so it was a real, you know, buzz when he came over and had a chat with me. And he described the character. He said this very thing about it. He says, you know, people kept saying he was Shakespearean. He says, but I think he's more. I'm going to get the word wrong, but I don't know. Arthurian. It was more like a character from King Arthur than anything else.
Hmm.
And I thought that made more sense actually.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but Shakespearean in the way of, I don't know, the tragedy of his demise, the you know, the sort of disfigurement and all that sort of thing, maybe. But yeah, I understood what he meant by
Yeah.
that. He's a lot more mythical, I think.
Yes. I think that is an apt analogy. I love that actually. You also talked about pulling from personal experience. Did you have, I know that you have children of your own, acting across, those, in those scenes where you've got a willful teenage daughter. Like I have a willful teenage daughter too, and it
Oh
was very
yes,
relatable to me as a viewer, knowing some of. I mean, granted, she's not going to be there is no king or queen of the United States, but there is a through line that is you almost do feel that connection. Did you pull from your experience with your own children when you're dealing with Emma and Millie?
I think more so with Millie.
Mhm.
I mean, but you know, touch wood. Neither of my daughters are sort of wayward and getting into some, thank God. But I know what you mean. It's not easy dealing with teenagers. It's not easy having teenage daughters sometimes.
Mm.
So I could definitely relate to that. I think one of the toughest things about being a father is that as much as you try to influence them, it's quite frustrating sometimes knowing that they're probably more influenced by the outside world and
Right.
teachers outside. That's a really difficult one to do. And also any sense of control, just forget it. There's control is not an option. You have to surrender to that as well. And also, having children of any of any age or whatever, it's just you have to surrender to that idea that the world can be a very sort of fearful place. And I feel like I'm a very protective father, and I sometimes project some of my fears onto them
Mhm.
and worries onto them. And that's something that, I kind of used a little bit. But I think I enjoyed those scenes with Millie. It was interesting playing a kid who was kind of pleased to be named heir, but didn't understand what it took.
Right.
And I think people thought sometimes Viserys was a bad father or not a good father, and it's like he's not a groovy dude. She's the heir to the throne, and because she's the heir, there is a sense of duty, and you can't be seen in whorehouses. You have to be squeaky clean to be able to do that. And I think his frustrations were like, you have got to keep your out of trouble, and you've got to find a husband, and you've got to, because it's your duty. And I think there was a lot of frustration in their relationship with regards to that. Really, that was the barrier with them, and the death of her mother too.
Right.
That's
It's
quite a big one.
they're both grieving, right? And
Yeah,
it's tough to connect when you're both individually grieving in your own way. And I think that caused separation between the characters.
yeah, because I don't think either. Well, she was a child, so she didn't know how to articulate it, and he was riddled with guilt, and he didn't know how to articulate it. It was the love of his life, and I don't think. Well, I know Viserys never got over her death, never forgave himself, and was never in love with anyone else ever again. Anyway, so in that sense, it was a great tragedy, and I think that's a secret that I kept through the whole thing from Viserys, that he was just. He never recovered from that death, and when he started to get sicker and sicker, Um, he wasn't somebody that was asking for a cure for anything. He was, quite happy to accept this as his fate because of what he'd put his wife through. Really.
One of my favorite scenes of yours actually takes place in episode 8, where you talk about the Phantom mask. He's got the mask on, and he needs to go into the throne room one last time to support Rhaenyra and her claim to the throne. And it's the long walk, and I've never seen anything like that on social media, where everybody was just no, it just the pain just resonated. What was going through your mind when you were filming that scene?
Well, that walk. I mean, I think Miguel saw the guy who was doubling me do that walk in a rehearsal after I'd done it, and he was a bit like, "What's that? What's going on here?" And they were like, "No, that's how Paddy's doing it." There was a bit of like, what's all this about? I knew what it was about because I'd shot the scene before it, where he's in so much pain, and they're trying to dress his wounds, and he's in so much pain, and he refuses the medication. Um, it was that scene, like he can't bear people even touching him anymore. So it just informed how heavy those clothes were on him, that robe, that crown, everything, how everything that touched his body hurt, how he stank, you know, his body was rotting that much that he stank. I just felt like he stank. He'd become a really sort of poor kind of human being. It was pitiful. It was like if it was a dog, you'd put him down.
Right.
And when I came to do that walk in, there's a few things running through my mind. One of them was this: I kind of knew it was a big moment, and there's a couple of things going on in my mind. Things like the look to Rhaenyra, they weren't in this; those things weren't in the script. But his thing was to find Rhaenyra, and then the other thing was getting to the foot of this throne and looking up and knowing that it's the last time you're ever gonna ascend those steps, and looking at it like it's Mount Everest, and just taking that one last climb up, which Damon comes and helps him. But there's a part in my mind as an actor where I just sort of went, right, I'm going to make everybody wait. I don't care if this takes 20 minutes for this man to walk to that throne. I'm going to do whatever it takes. And I was scared to do it, to be honest with you, just in a way of like, oh, I don't want to take up everybody's time, and I don't want people to be yawning halfway through or whatever, and looking at their watches and all that, all the crew. But I was like, no, fuck it. They're going to wait, and it's going to take as long as it takes. So I do the rehearsal of it, and it takes, I don't know, 5-10 minutes to walk. And I, look at Rhaenyra, I get to the foot of the throne, and everyone's like, great, wow. Now I've got to do it 100 times. And I'm just going, what were you thinking, man? What were you thinking? This is ridiculous, And in the end, I put my hip out. Actually, I'm all right now, but it took me a long time to just get back into alignment. My hip went out. I had these walking sticks that kept breaking, and it was. I was sort of going, "What did you do that for? You've got to do this now for days and days. Not just for yourself, but everyone else off camera. Well, these things take days to shoot, but it was worth it because it was a great moment, and there were so many things playing at once, and I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I was bold enough to do it, really, because it became a big moment in the show.
Absolutely, it's the most iconic moment of the series. You talked about working with Matt Smith, who plays Daemon, Viserys's brother. In at the end of that scene, there's the moment where the crown falls off your head. He picks it up and puts it back and helps him get back onto the chair. I think the crown falling off was an accident. Is that an urban legend, or is that true? Is that true?
No, that's true. It's
Okay.
true. It did. It fell off, and Matt picked it up, and we got to the throne, and it was like a little look at each other, like, and he put it on my head. We just knew that it's a moment, and I can't tell you how many sets I've been on that would have not made it in because it was a mistake. It fell off. It's a mistake. It's a blooper. And it was like, no, this is important.
Yeah.
This is important. This guy's wasted away so much. This thing don't even stay on his head anymore. It falls off. It's so heavy, and it was such a moment, and it said so much about the brothers that didn't need dialogue. It didn't need any of that. Sometimes the beautiful thing is that just a gesture can say it all. And that was it, the brothers and the look at each other. Nothing else needed to be done. But I did make sure that every time I walked up them steps, it fell off my head again. For those reasons.
Yeah.
Just
it has to
go,
be included.
Yeah, this is staying in. This is staying in. And Geeta was great because it made it, and there was a few things in Geeta's episode, a few little improvisations, and this is what I was talking about earlier, the freedom of the character. You don't go in there and riff. It's not Goodfellas. You can't sort of get a party going and get the riffing out. So it's not improvisational in that way. But there's just some things that I felt in the character sometimes that I thought, no, I'm going to say this. I'm going to do this because it feels right. And they all made it into the episode. Even when he's dying on his bed, the no more, no more, like just those little things of no more suffering, no more suffering. And his final words when he dies, they all made it in. And that was really satisfying just to go, thanks for that, because all I ever wanted to do was honor this character. I wasn't showboating. I'm not. I just wanted to serve him and serve this story, and that they made it in there. And the crown moment was a really big one.
It's perfect, and it says so much. It gives a nice sort of coda to the relationship between Viserys and Daemon, which had been so contentious up to that point.
Yeah.
last question for you. You've had a lot of time now to sit with Viserys and think about it. I mean, this is a man who sat on the throne and continued to be king when it was literally causing him to rot. I mean, it was rotting him from the inside out. Do you think he was a good king?
Yes, I do. I do. I just don't think he was great at managing the load.
Mm.
That's all. I think he was a good king, and I think circumstances, tore him apart. The guilt over his wife, and I just don't think he was a man who could survive in that world. I had the benefit of obviously watching the original show and watching everybody conspire, and so I went into this show with that knowledge. So the people that he trusted were very, very few.
Mm.
And because I always had this suspicion running in my mind of everybody around that table, because I'd seen how the game was played, but I got that from watching the original show, really. So he wasn't as silly as people think. And I think it's that thing of mistaking goodness for weakness.
Right.
He wasn't willing to just jump in and save his brother or go in and help his brother when his brother was starting illegal wars. He's not about to send the dragons in. He understood what these beasts were. They were like nuclear weapons, and they couldn't be used just anyhow. He had a responsibility to keep peace, and I thought that was beautiful. After he passed it, he was referred to as Viserys the Peaceful, and that was a really beautiful title for him. I think he was a good king, and he was definitely a good man, but he probably wasn't the right man for the job.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes the, uh, people only understand the language and actions of a tyrant, and that's definitely not what he was. So I was proud to portray that in that kind of world.
And it's such a great way. I mean, that's a very eloquent, very beautiful thing that you said about him. I think it's such a great way to start this show too, because people have these preconceived notions from Game of Thrones about who the Targaryens were, and they weren't all crazy, right? They weren't all Aegon, and whoever else that we're going to find out about in the rest of the series. So I think it was a great way to start the show, is to know someone who was more gentle and who was keeping the kingdom together.
I loved him so much. He was such a great character.
He was, and a great performance. And thank you so much for your time today. This was a great chat.
Great to talk to
Best of
you.
luck. Have a great
Take
weekend.
care.
Bye
And
bye.
you. See ya. Bye bye. Thank you.